Hi, I'm Jacob Scott, Lowrance Product Expert. What we're going to do today is show you how to install the hydraulic steer Lowrance Outboard Pilot on your boat. Alright, so let's unpack this box and lay our pieces out and get ready to install our outboard pilot on our boat. This is going to be our pump fitting kit, which has our hoses, hydraulic fluid and fittings. Next is our box with instructions, our NAC1 autopilot computer, power cord, NMEA network cables, the 0.1 autopilot GPS antenna, additional network cables, and your NMEA 2000 backbone. The last thing we have is going to be our hydraulic pump, which drives our outboard pilot. Okay, so the first thing we want to do on this boat is we want to put in a NMEA network. Now, a lot of your boats may already have a NMEA network in it like this one does, and this one's pretty full. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add another T in here, and we're going to set this up like it's a brand new network, like your boat does not have one. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out where to install it, and I'm just going to put this one in here alongside these other T's, and I'm going to secure it against the wall. Now that I've got my T mounted against the wall, I'm going to take the power adapter for the NMEA network. I'm going to connect it to the T, and then I'm going to connect it into my fuse block so that I have power going to my NMEA network. Once I get it connected, I like to take my excess wire and make sure it's nice and neat. Tuck it up in a spot where it's out of the way. And then once we're done, we'll come back through and we will take wire ties and we will clean all these wires up so that they're all nice and neat and we don't have a big old bird's nest underneath here. The next thing we want to do is we want to prepare where we're going to mount our pump one on the wall in our console. It can be mounted 2 or 3 different ways. One of the best ways is straight up and down. The other way is you want it horizontal. The one thing you don't want to do is try to do it upside down. The important thing also is that you keep it below the fill level line on your helm that's already installed in your boat. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to mount it right down here in this corner. It gives us plenty of room to run our lines and they won't be bound up or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and get this installed in here now. So now that I've got my mounting location selected, we're going to go ahead and mount this pump to the wall. We'll start by getting this side in first. Okay, now that we've got our pump secure, we're going to get ready to finish mounting up our hardware, and then we're going to connect our hydraulic lines. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our NAC1 autopilot computer, and we're going to secure it also inside the console. It also needs to be in a dry place, so we've decided we're going to put it on the floor right next to our NEP2. So now that I've got it laid in here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a couple of pilot holes to start my screws into. By drilling the pilot holes before I put the screws in, that prevents me from cracking the fiberglass that's underneath here by just trying to drill straight into it. Now that I've got my pilot hole drilled, take one of my screws to secure this down. Okay, now that our NAC 1 is secured to the floor, I'm going to go ahead and install the power wire. I'm not going to connect it up yet until we connect up everything, but I'm going to go ahead and get my power wire in here, and I can go ahead and hook the pump 1 control to the NAC so that it's got the drive power hooked up to it. Now that I've got my NAC 1 autopilot computer secured in my console, I'm going to go ahead and hook the power cables up to the fuse block. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to install our standby button for the autopilot. What this button allows you to do is put your autopilot in standby. It'll cancel any navigation that's going on and gives you full control of your steering wheel at the press of the button. Now that we've selected where we're going to drill, it's time to put a hole in the boat. Now that we've got our hole drilled, we take our button, we remove our backstop from our button, we feed our wire into our console, and we also feed our button into the console. Now that we've put our autopilot standby button through the hole in the dash, we're going to come in underneath. We're going to slide the locking ring back on, and we're going to tighten it down. Now that our button is secure in the dash, all we have to do is connect these two wires to the autopilot computer. Now you may have noticed earlier when you were hooking it up that your power cable also had a blue and a yellow wire on them. This is where our standby button connects. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the black wire and connect it to the blue wire. Now we're going to take the red wire and connect it to the yellow wire. Now your autopilot standby button is connected to your NAC 1 autopilot computer. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mount our 0.1 AP GPS antenna up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up. Now if you look at this antenna, on the top you'll notice there's an arrow. You should always make sure that arrow faces the front of your boat, because what this is it is also a rate compass and a heading sensor. So if you had this arrow pointing to the back of the boat, it would think the back of the boat's the front of the boat. So make sure your arrow is pointing forward to the bow of your boat. We're going to go ahead and set it here. I'm going to make a couple of quick little marks. Okay, now that I've made those marks, I'm going to move my antenna and I'm going to drill through real quick. All right, there's my first hole. All right, now we're through on my second hole. Make sure that I have all the little shavings out. Okay, now that we've got our holes drilled, we've got our screws in and we're going to secure them. All right, now that we're all secured, we're going to come back here and open up our panel so we can run our cable down into our center console. Now, if you don't have a T-top on your boat and you have a clear line of sight to the sky, you can mount your 0.1 antenna in any position. Like we have these sample units here on the top of this console. On the back of the boat, if you have a corner that you want to put it on, you can also put it on there, right next to your driver's console on a bass boat or on a pontoon boat. So you've got unlimited options as to where you can mount it. The important thing that you remember is that you have the arrow pointing to the face of the boat and that you have a clear line of sight to the sky. Okay, now that we've got the 0.1 connected, the pump 1 mounted, and the NAC 1 mounted, we're going to go ahead and connect our hydraulic hoses to the pump 1 and prepare to hook the pump 1 to the helm 1 so that we get the hydraulic fluid flowing into the pump 1. It's going to get commands from the NAC 1, and that's what's going to drive your piston back and forth to drive your motor. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull out the little yellow stoppers. You should always keep those in place to keep the pump lines clean. We've got 3 hoses to connect here. You're going to have 2 dark hoses that are going to go on your outside fittings. And then we also have 1 clear hose, which is going to go in the middle fitting. And that clear hose is your return line hose. It's going to allow you to see the air bubbles and everything that go to your helm that we bleed out of the system once we start bleeding the system. Get these in here. All right, we got that one snug down. We're going to add the 3rd and final hose. Okay, so now we have all 3 of these hoses connected to the pump 1. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get ready to connect these to the Baystar Helm that we have on this boat. Okay, up till now everything's been fairly clean, and this is where it's going to get a little messy. What we're going to start doing now is disconnecting hydraulic lines. So what I've done down here is I've put a plastic trash bag to help catch some of the fluids that leak out. I have a shop towel handy, and I also have a little cup so that I can catch any fluids that spill while we do this. The hydraulic system's pressurized, otherwise it wouldn't be working properly. So as we take these lines loose, we're probably going to lose a little bit of fluid. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the lines from here. I'm going to add in my adapters. What I have here is the Baystar adapters for the orb fitting kit. This is one of their newer pumps. This orb fitting kit will be available soon from Lowrance. Until that point in time, if you would need the orb fitting kit, just contact your local authorized Baystar dealer and they can get the orb fittings for you. So now I'm going to go ahead and step in here and start disconnecting lines. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to disconnect 1 line at a time and get that fit up and go from there. By removing these and doing them 1 at a time, it also helps limit the amount of fluid that I lose. Go ahead and screw this one in first. Okay, so before I get all of these hoses hooked up and into place, the other thing I'm going to do is, if you notice right down here at the bottom of your helm, there's a little black plug. We're going to remove that plug. We're going to put this orb fitting in there, and then we're going to connect it to our transparent hose. And what this does is that's our return line to the steering helm from Baystar. So we're going to get this all connected up. Got it loose. Get this tightened down real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and get our clear hose hooked up to this. All right, we'll get these tightened down. All right. You may have noticed that the fluid in our lines is red for this installation video so that you could see what we're doing. We went ahead and used automotive transmission fluid, which is approved by Baystar for emergency use in your system if you need to. We used it in this case so that you could see the fluid going through our lines. So always use your Baystar approved hydraulic fluid for your hydraulic steering. This is just for demonstration purposes only. And now, we pull the other line. Okay, now that we've made all of our hydraulic connections and we've wiped up any spills that we've had, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start hooking our NAC 1, our pump 1, and our NMEA network together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to plug in my NMEA network cord. We're going to screw it in. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pump 1 and make that connection, and it's going to screw into the drive port. Since this is a hydraulic system that we've set up, you will not have anything in the feedback port. If we were doing a cable steer, you would have a connection there for the rudder feedback. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and connect power to this unit. Okay, we've got it powered up now. Now we're going to make sure that all of our connections are secure to the NMEA T's. So now I'm going to come in here and screw these into the T that we put in place earlier. I'm going to secure that. That is the NAC 1. This cable is the point 1. And finally, we're going to hook this cable in, which is our HDS Gen 3 12-inch unit. I've kept these cables all neat and together. After we get everything bled out and the pumps working and everything, we'll get these all tied up nice and neat. That's why you always try to lay them out ahead of time, kind of look at where they go. That way you can try to keep underneath your console as neat as possible and with as few tangles as possible. So now you can see we have all three of our devices hooked to our NMEA backbone, plus the power cable which powers up our NMEA backbone. We have made all of our connections to the Pump 1 and to the Baystar Helm. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start bleeding this system. I'm going to go ahead and open up the bleeder screw on the Baystar Helm. I'm going to connect the hose that allows me to fill it, and then I'm going to connect it to the fluid. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fill the reservoir back up, and we're going to bleed the air out of the lines that go to the Pump 1. Now, once I've removed that screw, the hose that comes with your Baystar Helm has a nice little fitting that allows you to screw it right in. Makes the job a lot easier. Now I'm going to take this fluid. I'm keeping the jug at an angle because I have some pinholes poked in the bottom, and that allows it to fill smoothly. All right, so now that we're connected, I'll go ahead and tip it up. You can see the fluid start to work its way down. And now what I'll do is, you can see as I turn the pump, it really starts to pull the fluid down. Now I'm going to come back the other way. Let these air bubbles work their way up the line. As you can see, we slowly have some fluid going back down. I'm just going to step back and look under here. And it looks like we've got fluid going to the Pump 1. So again, we're just going to run this back and forth a few times. It's really important to get all of this air out of the system. Now that I've run this back and forth a few times and I've got my Baystar Helm filled back up, I'm going to press my power button on my HDS Gen 3 unit and select Autopilot. It's going to come up with this screen, and I want to select Power Steer. So now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to run it back and forth. This is going to run my ram back and forth and pull fluid into the Pump 1. And now I'm going to run this back and forth several times like I did previously with the steering wheel to bleed the air out of this system now. You may be able to hear it, but you can hear the pump as it applies power. In your outboard pilot kit, you're going to get a liter of hydraulic fluid. That's what you're going to use that for, is to fill your system back up and to bleed the air out of it. Okay, while we're bleeding the lines of air, there's a couple other things that we can do with our unit. We're just going to leave this hooked up because the air bubbles are going to slowly work their way out of the system. But while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and show you what to look for in your network source settings to make sure that your outboard pilot functions properly. The first thing you want to do is press your Pages key and then select Settings. Then on the left-hand side of the screen, we're going to scroll down to Network, and we're going to select Data Sources. We're going to look at the engine. When you select Engine, it shows Center. You're going to select Center, and then you want to see where it says Pilot Present. You want to see that it has the NAC1 Autopilot computer. Make sure you have a check mark in there. We're going to go ahead and exit out of this. What you want to do is select your Autopilot data sources. And what we want to do is we want to hit Reset. It's going to say yes to that. Then we want to touch it again, and we want to auto configure. Again, we're going to say Start. Now that we've done that, if we look at our Autopilot data sources, under compasses, we're going to have our 0.1 AP. When you touch navigation, it's going to show your HDS 312. Under position, again, it's going to select your 0.1 AP. Then when you look at your rudder feedback, again, you want to look at that and make sure that the virtual rudder feedback is enabled for your hydraulic steer system. Now that we've gone through and done all of that, we can look at commissioning. Now, the autopilot commissioning on the dock side, we're going to do the VRF calibration. We're going to select the grade box, and it's going to ask us to use the wheel to turn the rudder to the center position, which we're pretty much there right now, so I'm going to go ahead and select next. And now it's going to start asking me, did the outboard motor turn to the starboard position? This time it did not, so we say no. And each time we tell it no, it's going to add a little more voltage. Again, I'm going to tell it no. And tell it no one more time. Okay, so now that it turned how we want it, I'm going to tell it yes. It says apply higher voltage. To that we say yes, and basically what we're doing is we're telling the system, yes, I know we applied more voltage than what you started off with. So now I'm going to turn all the way to the max starboard. Now that I'm all the way over, I'm going to say next. It's going to tell me that to press and hold. It's going to turn it to port. Once it turns it all the way to port, when it gets to the locked position, I need to release it. Okay, now I'm going to release it. And now what it's doing is it's moving it back to the center position. Once it's moved back to the center position, the calibration is complete. Okay, now that we've commissioned our outboard pilot, we've bled the system, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect my bleeder hose. I'm going to close everything up, and this boat will be ready to take to the water. Again, it's kind of handy to have a towel around to catch that mess as it comes up. And now we've completed the install of the Lowrance Outboard pilot with the Baystar Helm.